What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses walks onto a daytime talk show and everything goes completely sideways? When careful media training meets raw, unfiltered opinion, and when a simple promotional interview transforms into the kind of television moment that breaks the internet. We're about to dive into the explosive encounter between Anne Hathaway and Joy Behar that had producers scrambling, co-hosts speechless, and millions of viewers watching in absolute shock. Before we get into exactly what was said that caused such chaos, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think really happened here, because this story has layers you won't believe. The morning started like any other taping of The View. Anne Hathaway was scheduled as a guest to promote her latest film, a drama about corporate whistleblowing that had been generating awards buzz. She walked onto the stage in a crisp navy blazer, smiling and waving to the audience as they applauded. The co-hosts greeted her warmly, and for the first few minutes, everything seemed perfectly routine. Whoopi Goldberg asked about the film's intense subject matter, and spoke passionately about the importance of telling stories about everyday heroes who risk everything to expose the truth. The audience was engaged, nodding along, and it looked like another successful segment. Then Joy Behar leaned forward with a question that would change the entire tone of the interview. She asked about a comment the actress had made in a magazine interview weeks earlier, where she had discussed the responsibility of wealthy individuals in addressing social inequality. Joy's voice carried a slight edge as she said, "So, you think people like us sitting here making good livings in entertainment were part of the problem?" Anne's smile faded just slightly. She took a measured breath before responding. "I think we have to be honest about the platforms we have and the influence we wield. That's not controversial. That's just reality." Joy wasn't satisfied with that answer. She pressed further, saying, "But you specifically said that people in our tax bracket should be paying far more than we currently do. You do realize that sounds pretty easy to say when you've already made your millions, right? Some of us worked our way up from nothing." The other co-hosts exchanged glances, sensing the shift in energy. Anne's posture straightened. She replied, "I absolutely worked my way up too, Joy. I'm not claiming I was born into wealth, but recognizing that the system is broken doesn't mean I'm attacking individual people. It means I'm willing to look at facts about wealth distribution and admit that something needs to change." The audience had gone quiet. You could feel the tension building. Joy leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "Here's what I find interesting," she said, her voice rising slightly. "Celebrities love to lecture everyone about inequality and social justice. But when it comes down to it, how many of you actually make significant sacrifices? You fly private jets to climate conferences, you live in gated communities while talking about community." Anne's jaw tightened visibly. "That's a false equivalence, and you know it," she replied. "You're conflating personal lifestyle choices with systemic policy positions. I can advocate for higher taxes on the wealthy, including myself, while still living in the world as it currently exists. That's not hypocrisy. That's pragmatism." Joy shook her head, a slight smirk crossing her face. "It sounds like hypocrisy to me. It sounds like virtue signaling." The phrase hung in the air like a spark near gasoline. Anne's eyes flashed. "Virtue signaling," she repeated slowly. "That's the phrase people use when they want to dismiss someone's genuine beliefs without actually engaging with the argument. I've put my money where my mouth is. I've donated millions. I've lobbied for policy changes. What exactly would you like me to do differently, Joy? Apologize for caring about people who have less than I do." Whoopi tried to interject, saying, "Okay, let's maybe take a breath here and talk about the movie." But Joy wasn't finished. She turned to Anne and said, "What I'd like is for you to admit that it's easy to be generous with other people's money. You want to raise taxes on the wealthy? Fine. But you're also asking working-class people who watch this show to foot the bill for programs that you think are important. Maybe they have different priorities." Anne's voice remained controlled but firm. "Working-class people would benefit most from the programs I'm advocating for. Joy, universal health care, affordable child care, paid family leave. These aren't radical ideas. They exist in virtually every other developed nation. And study after study shows they'd be paid for by taxing people like us, not working families." The audience began to murmur. Some people applauded Anne's response. Others sat in uncomfortable silence. Joy's face had flushed slightly. "So now you're the expert on economic policy?" she shot back. "You've got an economics degree I don't know about?" And replied calmly, "I don't need a degree to read reports from actual economists. Do you disagree with the data Or do you just disagree with the conclusion? Joy's voice rose. I disagree with being lectured by someone who lives in a bubble. You know what's insulting? Being told that I don't care about people because I question whether massive government programs are the answer to everything. And leaned forward now, her composure cracking just slightly. I never said you don't care about people. I said the system is broken. If you're taking that as a personal attack, maybe you should ask yourself why. Joy's mouth opened and then closed. Sarah Haynes jumped in quickly, trying to redirect. And tell us about working with your director on this film. The emotional scenes looked incredibly challenging. But Anne was still looking at Joy, and Joy was staring right back. The moment stretched out, uncomfortable and electric. After what felt like an eternity, Anne turned to Sarah and began answering the question about her director. But her voice was tight, her smile forced. Joy sat back in her chair, arms still crossed, not joining the conversation. Sunny Hostin asked a follow-up question about the film's themes of courage and moral responsibility. Anne answered thoughtfully, but the atmosphere had shifted completely. What had started as a routine promotional interview had become something else entirely, something raw and unrehearsed that had the audience on the edge of their seats. The conversation limped forward. For another minute with the other co-hosts doing their best to steer things back to safer territory. Alyssa Farah Griffin asked about the research Anne had done for her role. Anne spoke about meeting real whistleblowers and hearing their stories. But Joy remained silent, her expression unreadable, and everyone in the studio could feel that the conflict was far from over. It was only a matter of time before someone said something that would reignite the fire. That moment came when Whoopi, perhaps sensing that avoiding the tension was making it worse, decided to address it head-on. She turned to both Anne and Joy and said, "Look, clearly you two have different perspectives on some important issues. That's what this show is about, right? Different viewpoints. Can we find any common ground here?" And nodded slowly. "I think we both care about people," she said carefully. "We just disagree on how best to help them. I can respect that." Joy tilted her head, her lips pressed together. "Can you though?" she asked. "Because a minute ago you were implying that I'm defensive because I'm secretly worried you're right." Anne's eyes widened. "I didn't say that." Joy shot back. "You absolutely did. You said if I'm taking it as a personal attack, maybe I should ask myself why. That's not respectful disagreement, and that's pop psychology. That's you telling me that my position comes from some kind of guilt or insecurity rather than genuine conviction." And took a breath, clearly trying to maintain her composure. "Okay," she said. "You're right. That was condescending, and I apologize. I shouldn't have phrased it that way. But Joy, you've been questioning my sincerity from the moment this topic came up. You called my beliefs virtue signaling. How is that not dismissive?" Joy leaned forward again. "Because I've been in this business for decades, and I've seen countless celebrities adopt causes because it's good for their image. I've watched people preach about the environment and then take helicopters to avoid traffic. I've seen actors cry about the homeless crisis and then lobby against affordable housing in their neighborhoods. So, yes, forgive me for being skeptical when another millionaire actress tells me she knows what's best for America." Anne's face had gone pale, but her voice remained steady. "I'm not every other celebrity, Joy. I'm sitting here right now having this conversation with you. I didn't deflect. I didn't give you talking points. I'm engaging with your criticism directly." The audience was completely silent now. You could hear the studio lights humming. Sunny tried to step in saying, "I think what's happening here is actually really valuable. We're seeing a real conversation about class and privilege and responsibility." But Joy wasn't done. She turned to Anne and said, "You want a real conversation? Fine. Let's talk about your movie. This film you're promoting, it's about a whistleblower who exposes corporate fraud, right?" And nodded. "And I'm sure it's very inspiring," Joy continued. "But let's be honest about what it really is. It's a product. It's designed to make money for a studio, for producers, for you. So when you sit here and talk about responsibility and inequality, aren't you also selling something?" Anne's composure finally cracked. Her voice rose for the first time. "Of course I'm promoting a movie, Joy. That's literally why I'm here. But that doesn't invalidate everything I believe. You're a host on a talk show that makes money from advertising. Does that mean you can't have genuine political opinions? Does that mean everything you say is just selling something?" Joy's eyes narrowed. "That's different and you know it. I'm a political commentator. It's my job to have opinions. You're an actress playing pretend for a living." Anne's voice went cold. "Playing pretend?" she repeated. That's what you think I do. Joy shrugged. It's what you literally do for a living, Anne. The other co-hosts looked stricken. Alyssa opened her mouth to speak, but seemed unable to find words. Whoopi's expression had gone from concern to alarmed, and stood up slightly in her chair, and for a moment it seemed like she might actually walk off the set. Her voice, when she spoke, was shaking with barely controlled anger. I play characters, Joy. I tell stories. Stories that matter to people. Stories that make people think and feel, and sometimes even change their minds about important issues. If you think that's less valuable than what you do, sitting here every day telling people what to think about the news, then I genuinely feel sorry for you. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Joy's face flushed deep red. She stood up from her chair, her voice loud enough that it echoed in the studio. You feel sorry for me? You feel sorry for me? I've been fighting for progressive causes since before you were born, and I've used this platform to defend women's rights, LGBTQ rights, voting rights. What have you done besides play dress up and collect awards? And stood up too, her hands gripping the edge of the table. I've used every bit of influence I have to amplify voices that don't get heard. I've funded organizations. I've testified before Congress. And I've never once suggested that my work is more important than anyone else's. But you, Joy, you seem to think that because you've been doing this longer, you have some kind of monopoly on caring about people. Whoopi stood up now, her voice firm. Okay, that's enough. We need to take a break. Both of you sit down. But neither Anne nor Joy moved. They stood on opposite sides of the table, staring at each other, the air between them crackling with hostility. Joy's voice dropped lower, more controlled, which somehow made it more intense. You want to know what I really think, Anne? I think you're naive. I think you've been wealthy and famous for so long that you've forgotten what it's like to actually struggle. You talk about systemic change like it's simple, like we just need to care more and everything will fix itself. But the real world doesn't work that way. Anne's eyes were blazing. Don't you dare tell me I don't understand struggle. You don't know anything about my life. You don't know what I came from or what I've seen. And you know what? Even if I had been born wealthy, even if I'd never struggled a day in my life, that wouldn't make me wrong about policy. Ideas stand or fall on their merits, not on the biography of the person saying them. Joy laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Now you sound like a college freshman who just discovered philosophy. And the world isn't a debate club. People don't care about the merits of your ideas when they can see that you're not living according to them. Anne's voice rose again. What do you want from me, Joy? What would satisfy you? Should I give away everything I own? Should I stop working? Should I apologize for being successful? Joy shot back. I want you to stop pretending you're better than everyone else. I want you to admit that your political positions are convenient for you because they make you feel good without requiring any real sacrifice. And took a step back from the table, her chest heaving. That's not true, she said, her voice breaking slightly. That is not true. I believe what I believe because I've looked at the evidence and reached conclusions. If that makes me naive in your eyes, fine, but don't tell me I'm performing. Don't tell me I don't mean it. The studio had erupted in murmurs. Some audience members were talking to each other. Others sat frozen, watching the scene unfold. Producers were visible at the edge of the stage, talking urgently into headsets. Whoopi's voice cut through the noise. We're going to commercial now, but Joy ignored her. She pointed at Anne and said, You want to prove you mean it? Then stop talking and start doing. Stop giving interviews about how much you care and actually change something. Otherwise, you're just another rich person with opinions. Anne's face had gone from pale to flushed. Her hands were trembling as she pulled the microphone off her lapel. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was quiet but filled with fury. You don't get to tell me what I've done or haven't done, Joy. You don't know me. You've decided who I am based on your own prejudices, and nothing I say is going to change your mind because you're not actually listening. You're just waiting for your turn to talk. Joy crossed her arms. Oh, I'm listening. I'm listening to a privileged person complain about being criticized. Do you know how that sounds to people watching at home who are working 2 jobs to make rent? Anne's eyes filled with tears, though whether from anger or hurt was impossible to tell. That's a cheap shot and you know it. You're using other people's suffering as a weapon against me instead of actually engaging with anything I've said. You keep moving the goalposts. First, I'm virtue signaling, then I'm naive, then I'm not doing enough. And now I'm complaining about criticism. What is it, Joy? What's the real problem here? Joy's voice rose again. The real problem is that people like you think you have all the answers. You come on shows like this with your perfect hair and your designer clothes. And you lecture the rest of us about inequality. It's insulting. And wiped at her eyes quickly, angry at herself for showing emotion. My clothes? Really? We're talking about my clothes now? You're wearing designer clothes too, Joy. Everyone at this table is, but somehow when I talk about policy, my outfit matters. That's absurd, and you know it. Joy stepped out from behind the table. The absurd thing is that you can't see your own blind spots. You think caring is enough. You think good intentions matter more than results. Well, I've been in politics and media long enough to know that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, especially when those intentions come from people who've never had to face real consequences. Whoopi moved between them, her voice sharp. Both of you need to stop right now. This has gone way too far. Joy, sit down, and if you want to leave, you can leave. But we are not doing this on air. Joy turned to Whoopi, her voice incredulous. We're already doing it on air, Whoopi. The cameras are rolling. This is happening. And you know what? Maybe it needs to happen. Maybe people need to see that not everyone buys into celebrity activism. Anne's voice cut through. This isn't about celebrity activism. This is about you taking out your frustrations on me for reasons I don't even understand. Joy whirled back to face her. You want to know the reason? The reason is that I'm tired. I'm tired of watching people with platforms waste them on performative nonsense. I'm tired of celebrity culture drowning out real activists who've been doing this work for years without recognition. I'm tired of actors thinking that reading a script makes them experts on complex policy issues. And I'm especially tired of being told that I'm the problem when I point any of this out. Anne's voice was shaking. I never said I was an expert, Joy. I said I care. I said, I've educated myself. I said, I'm trying to use my platform responsibly. If that's not enough for you, then nothing will be. But that's your issue, not mine. The audience had devolved into competing reactions. Some people were applauding Anne. Others were applauding Joy. Still others were calling out for them to stop. Sunny stood up, her voice pleading. Can we please just take a breath? Both of you are saying things you might regret. And shook her head. I don't regret anything I've said. I've been honest. I've been direct. I've tried to have a real conversation, and I've been attacked for it. Joy scoffed. Attacked? You think this is an attack? This is a disagreement, Anne. If you can't handle disagreement, maybe you shouldn't go on talk shows. Anne's composure finally shattered completely. I can handle disagreement, Joy. What I can't handle is bad faith arguments. What I can't handle is someone who's decided I'm the enemy before I even open my mouth. You've been hostile from the moment this topic came up. You've questioned my motives, my sincerity, my intelligence, and my character. And when I push back, you act like I'm being unreasonable. That's not disagreement. That's something else entirely. Joy's face was hard. You want to know why I've been hostile? Because I've earned my opinions through decades of work. And you've earned yours through what? Reading articles? Talking to your publicist? You're in your bubble, Anne. And you can't even see it. And pulled her purse from under the table. That's it, she said quietly. I'm done. I came here in good faith to talk about a film I care about, and you've turned this into a personal attack. I'm not going to stand here and be insulted on national television. Whoopi reached out. And wait, let's just calm down and figure this out. And was already walking toward the edge of the stage. Joy called after her. Running away? That's real brave and very inspiring. And stopped and turned back. Her face strewn with tears. I'm not running away, Joy. I'm choosing not to engage with someone who has no interest in actual dialogue. There's a difference. Joy took a step forward. You don't get to walk off this set and play the victim. You started this by coming in here with your sanctimonious talking points. Anne's voice cracked. I answered a question you asked me. That's literally all I did. You asked about my interview comments, and I answered honestly. Everything that happened after that was your choice. You chose to escalate. You chose to make this personal. You chose to be cruel. Joy's voice was cold. If you think this is cruel, you're even more sheltered than I thought. This is honesty, Anne. Maybe you're just not used to people being honest with you. And looked at the other co-hosts, her eyes pleading for someone to say something. Anything that might make sense of what was happening. Sarah looked down at the table. Sunny looked torn. Alyssa seemed on the verge of speaking, but stayed silent. Whoopi's face was a mixture of concern and exhaustion. And turned back to Joy one last time. You know what the saddest part of this is? She said softly. I actually admired you. I've watched this show for years. I've listened to you fight for things I believe in, and now I realize that your activism only extends to people who fit your narrow definition of acceptable. If someone doesn't have the right credentials or the right background or the right tone, you dismiss them. That's not progressive, Joy. That's gatekeeping. Joy's voice was like ice. And you're so progressive that you can't handle being challenged without falling apart. And wiped her face again. I'm not falling apart because I was challenged, Joy. I'm upset because I was ambushed. There's a difference between tough questions and hostility. And you crossed that line 10 minutes ago. Joy shrugged. Then leave. No one's stopping you. And looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. You're right, she said. No one is stopping me. And with that, she walked off the stage, her heels clicking against the floor, the sound echoing in the stunned silence of the studio. The cameras stayed on Joy, who stood there watching and leave, her expression unreadable. Whoopi moved to the center of the stage, her voice strained. We're going to take a break, she said to the camera. When we come back, Willow will continue the show. The feed cut to commercial, but in the studio, chaos erupted. Producers rushed onto the stage. The audience was buzzing with conversation. Joy sat back down at the table, her face flushed, saying nothing. The other co-hosts huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers. And somewhere offstage, Anne Hathaway was presumably gathering her things, preparing to leave the building, having just been part of one of the most explosive moments in daytime television history. What started as a simple promotional interview had transformed into something no one could have predicted. Two strong-willed women with deeply held beliefs had clashed in real time, neither willing to back down, neither able to find common ground. The conversation had exposed fault lines not just between them, but within broader cultural debates about wealth, activism, celebrity, and authenticity. It was uncomfortable. It was raw. It was real. And millions of people would be talking about it for days, weeks, maybe even years to come. The question everyone would be asking was simple but profound. Who was right? Or was the real answer that they were both right and both wrong? Trapped in a moment where communication had broken down so completely that understanding became impossible. If you've made it this far, you've witnessed something that rarely happens on daytime television anymore. Real conflict, real emotion, real stakes. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you don't miss any updates on this story, and drop a comment below answering this question. If you had been in Anne Hathaway's position, would you have stayed and kept fighting, or would you have walked off that stage just like she did?